Hey guys, I am doing my Be Strong, and I'm doing it a little bit different this week. I know I usually show myself and not my dolls. There's two reasons why it's late this week. One is because Friday night I got home so late, I was exhausted. Saturday was just like a lot of running, getting stuff caught up. And today, Sunday, we took my kids to Build-A-Bear for a specific reason. As well as the second reason is I needed some time to process. So that's why it's late this week. And I really didn't want to show myself because honestly, when I've had downtime, I've been kind of a mess. And first of all, updates on myself aside from there was nothing big this week for me because I was gone at the meetup. And I was gone at the meetup, so there wasn't any doctor appointments. I have a doctor appointment Friday this week for my my June appointment. I am off a month. So I see my doctor at the end of the week. So far, looking at the scale, I don't know if I've lost any weight. At the meetup, I tried to be good. I didn't eat as much as I usually do. There were some days that I just wasn't hungry. There were some days that I was hungrier than others. But I pretty much only ate one, maybe 2 meals a day. I didn't eat breakfast at all while we were there. And we burned a lot of calories while walking around the mall, doing stuff, and laughing. We laughed a lot. And honestly, how Friday started out, and I will get into that here because I didn't want to put it there. How Friday started out for me, it was just kind of like I needed that week before the news I got on Friday. So I did have a victory when I flew to my parents in February. I had to take a total of 4 planes. I had to go from Austin to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Fargo, Fargo to Minneapolis, Minneapolis back to Austin. One of the planes, I think it was the the Minneapolis to Fargo, was a different plan than the other 3 planes. And the other 3 planes, I had no issues. I was able to buckle my belt fine on the plane. It was a little tight, but I was able to get it buckled. The plane from Minneapolis to Fargo, I could not get the belt buckled. So, I was one of the first ones on the plane, so the flight attendant asked this one gentleman if he would switch seats with me to see if maybe it was just the seat. And I still couldn't get that belt buckled, so I had to use a belt extender. And I'll mind you, this was all towards the beginning of my weight loss journey. So I was at my highest at this point. I was really nervous getting on my flight to Austin to Minneapolis for the meetup because it was the exact same flight or the exact same plane. Well, probably not the exact same plane, but it was the same plane number, whatever. I can't remember what type of plane it was. It was the same type of plane that I needed that belt extender for. And to save myself embarrassment this time, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go up to the gate before I get on and mention that I need the belt extender. And the lady was very nice about it. And the plane was there, so she went down and put the belt extender on my seat right away. So I put the belt extender on, flew with it on, going there. But as we were flying, I'm like looking at it, I'm like, do I really need the belt extender? Because look at how much slack was on the belt extender, how much slack was on the regular seatbelt with the belt extender on. I'm like, would I be able to without it? So on the flight home, I was the first person on the plane. And I decided, you know what? I am going to sit down and try this. Before I bother a flight attendant for a belt extender again, I'm going to see if I can buckle this belt. And I was so proud of myself. Not only was I able to buckle that belt, I was able to get a good 3 to 4 inches of slack on that belt. And this is the same plane with the same seat belts that I flew in about 6 months ago, and I needed a belt extender because I couldn't even get them remotely close. And now I've got 3 to 4 inches of slack in that belt. So, I mean, I was proud of myself for that. So that's it for the updates for me, and this is going to take a turn. I know everybody asks about my dad. And this is the reason why I'm showing Oakley, because I probably will break down talking about this. So, Friday morning, pretty much the whole week, when we got up in the morning, Crystal and Heather would go have breakfast together. And I'm not really a breakfast eater anyways, and so I would sleep in while they would get ready to go have breakfast. Then when they would go down to have breakfast, I would get up and get dressed and get ready for the day. That way I kind of had the room to myself to get ready, and I wasn't in a rush. And then by the time they would get back, we would go either to the airport shuttle, or like on Wednesday morning we all slept in. I think they got up just before breakfast ended and went down and had breakfast, if I remember correctly, on Wednesday, because Wednesday morning we didn't do much. So Wednesday I didn't get dressed till later, but Tuesday and Thursday and Friday they went down for breakfast, and then I got dressed while they were down there. So Friday started out the rest of the day, or Tuesday, Thursday. They got up, they got dressed, they went down to have breakfast, and I'm like, you know what, I've got time to myself. I will get the rest of the stuff that wasn't able to get packed up Thursday night, because I brought my pillow and blanket, so that needed to go in the suitcase. My pajamas needed to go in the suitcase. So I just needed to get some last minute things buttoned up, and then make sure everything fit in my suitcase or my carry-on bag, and get dressed. So I'm in the room. They literally had left like less than 5 minutes earlier, and my phone rings, and it's my mom. I wasn't really thinking much of it, because Thursday my dad was supposed to have a bone marrow test, because his platelet count has been low, and they wanted to do a bone marrow test to see possibly why the count was low. And my mom had texted me Thursday night saying my dad was unable to do the test because he wasn't supposed to eat Thursday after midnight between Wednesday and Thursday, and he decided to get up at 3 a.m. and eat. So the test was canceled. That's all she said in the text. So I just figured, maybe they were going to reschedule it. Didn't think much of it, because my dad being on steroids, he's been hungry a lot, so I thought maybe he got up, wasn't sure at the time, and ate. I wasn't exactly sure of what all transpired. All I knew was what she had texted me at about 8:30 Thursday night. So she calls me Friday morning, and the time she called was at like 9, not 9. It was like between 8:30 and 9. Which she would have been at work at that point, and she was calling me on her cell phone, which isn't uncommon. So I was just thinking, well, she's calling me to tell me exactly what happened yesterday, because she's at work and she's not around my dad, so she's able to talk. When I pick up the phone, my mom is sobbing. I'm like, what's going on? And she proceeds to tell me that my dad had told her he was done. He was tired, he was done, and he was refusing to take his medication. And that she had already put in a call to his doctors, and they were putting in a referral to put him on hospice, because he's told her, I've made peace, I'm ready to die. I can't do this anymore. I physically cannot do this anymore. I cannot be a pincushion anymore. I'm done being poked. I'm done being prodded. I'm done having people put stuff in me that makes me not feel good. And she was sobbing, and one thing that was hard was because a few months ago I did tell her, I'm like, Mom, you know, hospice isn't just for the end. It's for situations like you're in. And she wouldn't put him on hospice, but she knew on Friday she had to. And she didn't know how he would take it, but she knew she had to do something. And I'm trying to get dressed. I'm trying to pack up. I'm trying to be happy because I just had the most fun that I have had in a long time. From Monday to the point she called. I had never, well, I can't say I've never had that much fun. But as much as I love my kids, it was carefree. I didn't have to worry about my kids. They were home. They were being taken care of by my husband and my mother-in-law. I was able to just do as I please. I was able, like I said, to be free for those few days without kids, without worrying about them. Having fun with my two best friends. I mean, walking around the Mall of America with our dolls, people like giving us funny looks and us laughing hysterically about it. I had not laughed that much in that short a period of time in a long time. Like, genuinely laughed. And then to basically Friday morning have this all crash down. And I know my mom called me to let me know because I got mad at her when the seizure started. She didn't call me right away. But it's almost, with that, it was a catch-22 because it was almost like, Mom, you couldn't have waited till I got home to at least let me have this last day of not worrying about Dad. And I know I talked about this last week where my mom was angry about Wednesday not being able to go see them. In a way, I regret it, but in a way, I'm glad I didn't. Because the way she was describing him on Thursday or on Friday morning, even with Heather and Crystal by my side, I don't think I could have taken it. And I don't think I could have enjoyed the rest of my trip knowing that, after seeing it physically. I mean, I know what my mom tells me, but it's different when you see it. And I know she has been hiding. She hasn't been saying everything that goes on. So she got upset with me because at that point in time, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't emotionally deal with it at that time because I needed to get her off the phone because I needed to concentrate on getting dressed and getting ready to go home. And then she proceeded to ask me to change my flight to come to them. And I'm like, I can't, Mom. And she's like, well, you put the insurance on your ticket. And I go, yes, that's for if I get sick. Or if one of my kids gets sick beforehand and I couldn't take it. Or if there was an accident with my husband. And I needed to go home. That's what the insurance was for. It was for me to go home earlier. It wasn't to change going from Minneapolis to Austin to change it to go from Minneapolis to Fargo. That's not what the insurance was for. They would have changed the flights to go to the same destination just earlier. So I needed to get her off the phone. And she was getting irritated and upset with me because she just wanted to keep talking. And all I kept thinking is, I can't deal with this right now. I can't deal with this right now. Because I knew the more I talked to her, the more likely I was going to break down in that hotel room by myself. And I still needed to pack, get dressed, get to the airport, and get on a plane. And not be hysterical on that plane so I could get home to my family, to my kids, my husband. So I quickly got her off the phone as quick as I could. Crystal and Heather came back, and I just briefly mentioned my mom called and she's having to call in hospice. It didn't go much past that. We packed everything up. We went to the airport. We still had some laughs at the airport. And as bad as it sounds, I was just putting that off in my mind because I needed my best friends at that moment, and I needed to be laughing with them. I needed that. That is what I needed. So we got to the airport. There were still some laughs at the airport. Heather and I said our goodbyes to Crystal because Crystal's flight left early. And then Heather and I, when Crystal boarded the plane, we went to a spot halfway between our gates. And we got something to eat, and then we just sat and talked, the two of us, until it was time for her to go board her flight, which she was supposed to board before my flight, but by the time I got to my gate, she texted me and said her flight was delayed for a minute after mine. So I get on my plane, and I was, at this point, I was physically exhausted. I was mentally exhausted from being physically exhausted, and I couldn't even get into an emotional state to think about that. So the plane that I was on had the movie screens that you can watch movies. You get to pick your own movie. It was the kind that had the screens in the seats. So I literally just threw myself into watching a bunch of, or, well, not a bunch. I didn't have enough time. I watched Daddy's Home 2, which was a comedy. So, to kind of keep my head, keep my brain busy. And then when it was over, we got to Austin, and Greatest Showman was on there, and I knew it was on there because I actually watched it on the way to Minneapolis. And I needed those songs. That is what I needed at that point. So I put on Greatest Showman, and I just skipped forward to all the songs. So I was able to actually watch all the songs as we flew in to Austin. Coming home was actually literally as we were touching down, I was watching that song. So I meet my husband and kids at the airport. We get in the car, and I tell my husband what's going on. And at this point, I had put it off so much, I really hadn't come to grips about it. And then all of a sudden, my son says to me, "Mommy, did Papa die?" And I said, "No, honey. Papa has not died yet." I said, "But Papa is very sick, and Papa may die soon. Papa may die next week. Papa may die in 4 months. Papa may die in a year. We don't know. And honestly, the way things are progressing, I wouldn't be surprised if we have to make a trip up for a funeral in a few weeks." And honestly, I'm hoping, if it goes really quickly, that it's before the kids start school, so they won't have to miss school for it. But if they do, they do. At this point, that's the least of my concerns. So I was going to do this video last night, and I got everything set up to do this video last night, and my mom called. And my mom and I had a more frank discussion about a lot of stuff. And last week before I left for the meetup, she called to ask me if I wanted my dad's camera equipment. My dad has been taking, for the last few years, a lot of fantastic photos. He has about 4 different photo editors. He's got a computer that holds a lot of photos. It has a big processor to do those editing of photos. And honestly, the reason why my YouTube videos aren't that highly edited is because I just have a laptop, and while I do have a pretty good video editor for it, I can't use all the features on the video editor because the computer won't allow it. It just, every time I try to run that, it crashes. So, I was also thinking, because I'm usually using my little small point and shoot, that his cameras would be nice. He's actually got studio lights, unlike me just using this Walmart $10 lamp to try to make better lighting. He's got a few different backgrounds. Like, she's asking if I want all his studio stuff and camera stuff, and I said yes, it'd be great for YouTube. Well, she got mad at me because she thought when I said it would be great for YouTube, she thought I would be selling it to make money. Thought I was selling his cameras and all of this equipment to get money to buy stuff for YouTube. And I'm like, no. I would be using the lighting, the camera, the background for YouTube to help me make my videos better. So we got that cleared up, and her and I did have a talk. We talked for almost 4 hours last night. And my son has off and on been asking about my dad and my dad dying. I mean, my kids earlier this year went through a funeral with my grandmother. So in a way, it was kind of nice that the first funeral that they experienced wasn't their grandfather. It was still somebody that they knew and was a family member, but it wasn't their grandfather. As well as my grandma was cremated, so they were able to ask a lot of questions then. Well, I don't know if everybody knew about the Thursday thing with Build-A-Bear. Well, my husband was going to take the kids to Build-A-Bear to get them each a Build-A-Bear because we've decided my dad's going to be cremated. And we want to put a vial of his ashes in a bear for each of my kids. Because my son, with his autism, was asking me, like, when I feel sad and I need to talk to Papa, is there a phone I can pick up and call Papa in heaven? And I'm like, no, buddy, you can't. You just have to talk to him. He'll hear you. You might not hear him, but he will hear you. And my son just can't grasp that concept of Papa not physically being here. He can't pick up a phone and call Papa. So we decided to get them each a Build-A-Bear to put a vial of ashes in the bear. So that if they feel they need to talk to Papa, they can talk to their bear. And then as they get older, if they choose they don't want them in the bear, they can have them put into jewelry or have them made into jewelry or whatever they choose as they get older. And my son has been asking for this Chewbacca Build-A-Bear for almost 4 months now. And before all this stuff with my dad coming up, I had been thinking about this, like, trying to decide, like, do we let him pick a new bear, or what do we do? With the pay your age thing, my husband actually tried to take the kids and was told that they were closed. They canceled it. So my son didn't get his Chewbacca bear. Well, the more my son has been asking about my dad being sick, he asked me yesterday when we were at the store, he's like, Mommy, can I put Papa in Chewbacca when I get Chewbacca? And so now it's like, I need to get this Chewbacca for him. So this morning, I called Build-A-Bear, which it's about a 45-minute drive from us, and asked, I'm like, do you have any of the Chewbaccas left? I talked to the manager, and she's like, we've got a whole bunch of Chewbacca bears, but we only have one display Chewbacca left, the actual Chewbacca, and we have one unstuffed one. I'll put the unstuffed one in the back for you. And so I told my husband, I'm like, we need to get up there. We need to get this for him. And when we were at Build-A-Bear, my son was telling the lady, my papa's sick, and when my papa dies, we're going to take some of his ashes out of the cookie jar, because my kids call the urn the cookie jar. And we're going to be able to put them in my bear, so that when I'm sad, I can talk to Papa. And the lady started choking up and looked at me. And I shook my head yes. So the lady was really nice. She said that store policy is they can't put them in there anymore. But she said she was going to show me, but we forgot about it. And I forgot about it too, how to sew up the back of the bear to do this. But my husband said, you know what, worst case scenario, after he passes, we have the ashes. We go to the Build-A-Bear, we take them, we take Chewbacca. Worst thing they're going to do is say no. He said they might just have us put them in the bear and then they sew the bear back up. So we'll have to see how to do that. I might need to call the manager closer too, but it's more coming to grips that like I said, the way things have been going and how fast things have been going, I don't know how much longer my dad has left. I don't know. And then my mom made the comment to me last night that she's noticed when people get closer to death, they get this look in their eyes. And she said my dad's starting to get that. And she said that it's hard to see, but I don't want my dad to suffer. I don't want my dad just to force himself to do this. And I've told him this whole time, I'm like, don't do this for me. If you're going to fight, you're not fighting for me. You're not fighting for mom. You're fighting for yourself. And you're fighting for your grandkids. Because as hard as it's going to be for me, and hard as it's going to be for mom, we will go through the emotions. We will grieve. But my kids are going to be the ones that aren't fully going to understand. They just know that their papa's gone. That their papa that they've been very close to is gone. And that they can't talk to him anymore. And my son is a papa's boy. He'll tell you that. We have lots of videos of my son really little with my dad. And, I mean, my dad loves my daughter, but there's always been something between my dad and my son. And even though we live close to my husband's dad, my son doesn't have that relationship with my husband's dad. And even when my parents came to visit, or even when we went up to Fargo for my grandma's funeral, it was like they had never been separated. Like my son would glue himself back to my dad and want to be around my dad all the time. And like in the mornings, my son would get up and my dad, like when we went for my grandma's funeral, my son would get up in the morning and he would go lay down with my dad because my dad would still be laying in bed. Or my dad would get up, take his meds, eat breakfast, and then just kind of go lay down and watch TV. And my son would go get his blanket and go lay down with my dad. So, it's coming to terms. As hard as it's going to be with me, and I know I'm going to be a mess, I've been trying to hold this together, especially during the day around my kids, because it's already hard enough on them. And they don't know fully exactly what, they know Papa's going to die, and that's about the gist of it. So, I know this isn't exactly the update I wanted to give, and the update anybody wants to hear, and the video's gone way too long. But, if you could just please pray for my family. And that it won't be prolonged for my dad, because I don't want him to suffer.